Hey there, A's Day fans. Welcome to our Monday edition of our show. I'm your host, Joe Grado. I hope each and every one of you had a great weekend away from work and are prepping for the holiday week ahead. Today is Monday, November 24th. We got a good show for you. We're going to have some fun today. We are going to create the blueprint, the roadmap for success for the A's to be able to replicate the success of the 2025 Blue Jays. So we'll analyze some aspects of their quick turnaround from their 74-88 campaign in 2024 all the way to winning the American League East and being a game away from winning this year's World Series. So we'll discuss some interesting tweaks that they made to become a much more balanced team. And then we are going to provide, as currently constructed, the A's ideal lineup heading into 2026. We'll give a version of the lineup of the right versus a right-handed pitcher and then versus a left-handed pitcher, give our thoughts around that. And then before we get on out of here, the A's have made 3 more transactions. If they've signed 3 players to minor league contracts, we'll review just to get all caught up to speed the nature of those deals, who they are, and what impact they may have on the 2026 club. Holy Toledo, let's go A's. All right there, A's Day fans. Thank you again for kicking off your week with us here at A's Day for our Monday edition of our show. As a reminder, just want to make you aware and continue to make you aware of where you can find us outside of our podcast audio episodes that we offer twice a week. You can also catch our content on our social media channels on Instagram at A's Day Baseball Podcast, on X, formerly known as Twitter, at A's Day Baseball, and be sure to check out our YouTube channel for our video editions of our episodes just like this. If you are watching, it'll have the green logo just like you see behind my head, along with player interviews, content at baseball destination cities across the country, and so much more. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel. That is going to continue to grow in the 2026 season and beyond, so you will not want to miss any of that. And be sure to become an official subscriber of A's Day. Check out our Patreon site, patreon.com/A's Day for just $2 a month. You'll be entered to win A's Day t-shirts, A's autographed memorabilia, future A's game tickets, and so much more as we are able to grow this platform collaboratively. All right, let's have some fun today. We are going to lay out the blueprint and compare them side by side. So we're going to take aspects of the journey of the Toronto Blue Jays, where they came from, how this season ended up, and then going from there. So I want to give a little bit of a backstory of where they came from heading into the 2025 season, because this was a team that was riddled with so many question marks. So on the 2024 campaign, they finished last in the American League East. They were the 4th worst team in the American League, and they finished with a record of 74-88, 20 games back of first place in the division. They had the 19th best batting average in baseball with a .241 average. They had 156 home runs, which was the 4th least. They scored 671 runs, which was 23rd, and they only accumulated 1,306 hits, which was 18th. So you can see they were all at the bottom half, towards the bottom half of the league as a whole. And then on the mound, it got worse. They were 22nd in ERA, 24th in strikeouts, and issued the 12th amount of walks. So you can see there was a lot of instances where they knew they needed to make changes. And with a lot of the uncertainty heading into this season, they had issues wondering, because entering this year, this was Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s final year on his contract. So there was wonders if he would be open to an extension to stay in Toronto long term, or if he was going to be more intrigued to test the open market, which Toronto wanted to avoid, because I'm sure they were worried about getting into a bidding war with some of these larger market teams. So they knew that they had to do everything in their power to keep Guerrero Jr. in their building and get a deal done while he was still in the building, because once you hit that open market, anything could happen. So I don't think they knew that Guerrero Jr. would be the face of their franchise, and they basically, if they saw him go out the door, they would almost in a way have to start all over again. And I don't think Toronto was in a position to do that. They do have some accessibility to financials. So I think they were going to do their best to build a winning product to convince Vladdy to stay, and not just for next year, but for years to come. So as the season rolled on, early on in the year, they did get an extension done. They signed Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to a $500 million long-term deal. And that brings me to my first point of the blueprint. So you're coming off a season in the Blue Jays, there was a lot of disappointment. As compared to the A's, they've increased their win total over the last 2 years. So there's positive momentum building in the right direction. You have a nice young core nucleus. You've given Brent Rooker a contract extension. You've gotten Lawrence Butler a contract extension. So those are two pillars of this iteration of the A's that are here for this year and for many years to come. That's great. It's a great start. But I think the first step of this blueprint is to lock up your face of the franchise and continue to sign those pillars to support the foundation for the long term. So they've gotten two of the pillars taken care of, but they haven't taken care of the face of the franchise yet. And it's understandable. He just came on the scene this past season. But I truly believe that the direction that the Jays went in by signing Vladdy to a $500 million deal, it signaled to everyone in that building, they're here and they're here to stay, and they intend on building a championship product around this star player. So I think it sends a good message through the building that the organization is serious. So with how the A's have been operating, and there's been a lot of the business side of dealings that have left a lot of fans frustrated, and I'm sure even players internally, while they may not have necessarily vocalized it, I'm sure there's some sense of frustration of the current situation they're in. Well, I guess Sevy had some points about playing at Sutter Health Park this past season. But as a whole, I think it would do a lot between management and player relations where you'd see a huge boost of improvement. I think it already has improved, especially with the relationship that general manager David Forst has seemed to have built with a lot of these players in that room. So I think he's done a good job there. I think it's been better. It's better than it's been. But if you want to keep taking those positive steps forward, let's start with getting Nick Kurtz locked up long term. To me, he's going to be the face of your franchise. That's crazy to say, kid 22, 23 years old, and you can already say that. But he's got the intangibles. He's not only does he have the power, but he has that power to opposite field and to left center like no other. He led the league in opposite home runs. I think he had 17, and he didn't even play the full 162. So imagine what he's going to do when he has a full offseason, preparing on a major league schedule, having a good, firm confidence going into spring training, while everyone does need to show that they are still capable of their ability. Nick Kurtz, he's slotted in to a spot on this roster, the everyday first baseman, towards the top of the order. He can just focus on preparation as compared to fighting for a roster spot. Because if he's fighting for a roster spot, everyone on this club is. That's how good he was this past season. So I think you have the opportunity with a guy that's not even at his prime years to sign a guy long-term before he hits his prime market value. Not that he necessarily may price you out, but you may be able to get him long-term on a much more team-friendly contract at this stage of his career. He's already assembling the hardware, taking home this year's AL Rookie of the Year, getting a Silver Slugger, and even getting a Hank Aaron Award nomination. That's nothing to stick your nose up at. That means he was, at worst, the 10th best hitter in the American League, but that's a nomination given to the 10 best players in each of both the American League and National League, respectively. So that just speaks to the magnitude of the foundation that Kurtz has laid for his young career. So I say take advantage of it and send a good message in that locker room. Do it before spring training. Do it early on in spring training. Whenever you want to get it done, sign him to a long-term deal. Keep him here. Guarantee him to be here for 7 years. That's a way to send a message and set the tone for a new year, that the A's have set this foundation of ushering in a new culture. And you saw it at times last year. Just had a couple really bad stretches that kept this team outside on the postseason conversation looking in. But I do think there's going to be a lot more adherence to all this experience accrued that as the face of the franchise goes, this team goes. When Kurtz is in the lineup, this team is humming. And I know there's going to be some adjustments he's going to make in year 2, and it might not look as effortless as it did in year 1. But I'm sure over the bulk of his career, it's going to look real good when it's all said and done. So I think you start there, sign him to a long-term deal, and then you get to your pillars too as well. Because another guy that I think has superstar potential, and he was on the All-Star team this year, a rookie to start on the All-Star game. He's got a high contact rate. This is a guy that you want here for the long term too as well. The defense is pretty good. Jacob Wilson. Sign him to a long-term deal. And I think with some of the injury concerns he's had early in his professional career, I think it's gotten better, and I don't think it's going to be a problem long term. I think he's finding solutions to increase his overall strength and flexibility. So I think especially once he gets into his full development of his body, once he gets full development and increases that durability, I think you're going to see Wilson be a guy that regularly plays 140, 150-plus games. So I think just having another pillar, and it's really important because it's an important position to have some consistency at for the present and the future. But I would take care of Jacob Wilson as well. Coming off an all-star campaign, it would have been rookie of the year himself if his teammate was not Nick Kurtz or if Nick Kurtz played in the National League. That's how good Wilson was. Didn't strike out a whole lot, didn't walk a lot, but definitely worked his way on base more times than not at a pretty consistent clip, finishing second in the American League in batting average. So there's a lot to like here, and I think there's a lot that he's going to continue to develop in his overall game. There's some pop in his bat that was unexpected, but definitely a welcoming sign. He's the complete package. Get it done. Keep supporting these pillars. And then I would say another long-term extension type candidate, someone that's still on the younger age of on the younger side of 30, has a little bit more MLB experience, and it may be a little bit trickier getting this done before this guy hits free agency. Of course, I'm talking about catcher Shea Langoliers. He is arbitration eligible. He is projected to make about $5.1 million this year. But he's another one. So we talked about you lock down your face of the franchise. Then you start locking up consistency as long as they're quality positions at the most important positions on the field. To me, most important spots, shortstop, catcher, center field's important too as well. But if you at least lock up your shortstop, I would probably wait on Clark, just to be completely honest. Obviously, the defense you got to love. But again, he's missed a lot of time due to injury too as well. And definitely need to see some growth offensively. Has the potential, the speed potential to steal some bases, but the on-base percentage leaves a lot to be desired. So I want to see a little bit more before giving him a long-term extension. But that's something that can be done maybe 2027, 28. There's no rush there. But I want to lock up my shortstop. I want to lock up my face of the franchise. And then I want to lock up my catcher, especially a catcher who time and time again is on a steady climb, just entering his prime years. And he's someone that, if it wasn't for Kyle Raleigh in Seattle for what he did this year, Langoliers would have been regarded a lot higher in many baseball circles. Hitting 30-plus home runs, being a consistent presence behind the plate, throwing out runners at a consistent clip, and his defense continues to improve year in and year out. He handles this pitching staff very well, and he does have the willingness and the want to stay in the lineup every day. So he's that important to this lineup that he needs to be there basically every day. And I know that would be a lot to ask of a catcher to squat back there every day, but that's why you'll see, let's just say in a 3-game series, Langoliers will catch the first 2, and then that Sunday day game, he'll still be in the order in the designated hitter spot, because it's important to have that offensive production not be removed from the lineup. And I know there may be some fatigue that sets in there, and he'll get his day off every so often. But you can see there's a little bit of a drop-off, especially when Langoliers is going. He was one of the best hitters in all of baseball with all the home runs he was popping post-All-Star break. I think he led baseball with home runs in the second half when it was all said and done. That was an impressive streak he was on, but I think there's more to go, which is crazy to say out of the catching position. So the tricky part here, he is represented by Scott Boras, who is known to drag out negotiations, but for the sake of getting the player the highest monetary value possible. So it is at the player's interest, which is what you want from your agent, but it just typically those processes take a little bit longer to get done. So I would have that on my list and have that conversation, because if you can get Langoliers extended to a 4 or 5 year contract, that would be great. Then you could stretch out your financials to allocate resources to improve the roster as a whole, as compared to by the time it would be to pay Langoliers a free agency, that contract value is going to increase significantly. And that's where the tricky part may come in. I'm sure Langoliers' camp is made aware by Boris's group that would be the case. As long as he stays on this trajectory, that time that he hits free agency, he is going to get paid. He's going to be the premier catcher on the market, and the A's are going to have to battle with a lot of other people to retain his services. So that's why I would try to get this done this offseason, if not next. He is very vital to what the A's do and to the operation of success. To me, I'm all about the extensions here, especially when you have this young core that looks like it's almost mirror image to those 1970s teams. Not saying they're going to win 3 World Series in a row, but we could be on the dawning of this team being perennial postseason contenders. And like I said, anything can happen when you get into the dance, and you can always see this group breaking through, especially if they make some additions to the pitching staff, to the bullpen, maybe add a bat here. This team's not that far away as you think, so very intrigued to see if any of these offseason transactions are able to get done before, during, or after spring training at some point in 2026 would be music to my ears. All right. The next step here is you're going to want to shift your philosophies a little bit. And I think you're going to want a focus on more of contact rate and decreased strikeout rate. So the Blue Jays, they were at the top half of both of these categories in terms of being one of the best contact rate teams in all of baseball and striking out one of the least. And they did a good job of increasing their walk rate, creating more opportunities and more havocs on the base paths. So on the A's on the year, so as I like to call the superficial numbers, like the average, the home runs, a lot of those, A's looked real good. They were a top 8 to 10 offense across the board in all major categories. They created a lot of offensive production by swinging the bat and getting on base. So I think they did a good job there. And you saw it pretty consistently throughout the year, especially when the top of the order was humming or when the bottom of the order would be working their way on and bringing it back to the top of the order for more opportunities. There were many times that this A's lineup showed a lot of consistent balance. The 2 glaring issues that stood out, which I think held this offense back at times, and I think especially during that 3-week stretch where they lost 20 of 21 games, because I think offensively, I think the team as a whole tried to do a little bit too much at that point to try to get off the snide, and I think it seemed like it never was going to end. It just had that kind of feeling. But on the 2025 campaign, the A's, they struck out the 10th most times in all of baseball, to go along with being toward the bottom half of the league, with drawing the 17th most walks in baseball. So that's not a good formula for success unless your batting average is off the charts, you're driving the ball out of the ballpark at will, which at times, yes, the A's generate a lot of runs via the home run, but that's not going to last over the marathon of 162. What is going to last is, like I mentioned before, connecting those at-bats, taking your singles, grinding at-bats, working your way on base, drawing walks, going first to third, doing the little things right, grinding those little baseball plays out. And I think that sets a tone for you that puts more pressure on the opposing team. Like, I'll give you an example. Watching the American League Division Series where the Blue Jays were taking on the Yankees, especially those first 2 games up in Toronto, it just seemed like they were sticking the bat head out with 2 strikes off Fried or wherever the Yankees were throwing. And it seemed like they were finding green grass all over the field. And then when they would have the bases loaded or have traffic on the base, so a couple runners on, at least one runner on, that's when they would open up with those death blow home runs. When Vladdy hit the grand slam, or they connect 2-run home runs. When Ernie Clement got the power going. Like, it would happen at ideal moments as compared to just always swinging for it. And I think at times the A's, being a younger team, I think showed a little bit lack of discipline, which is why their numbers ended up where they were. I think there are times when they're going real good, You got guys at the bottom of the order like Brett Harris and Darrell Hernandez that are grinding out at bats, 8, 9, 10 pitch at bats, walking or at least making that pitcher work so that the next hitter that steps in has a pitcher that's fatigued, maybe on the ropes a little bit, and may catch a pitch that catches a little bit more of the zone and having more success. I think that's what the contact rate does at the end of the day. It puts pressure on the other team. Puts a little hint of doubt in that opposing pitcher. Even if it does result in an out, it makes him start to doubt, do I not have my best stuff today to get hitters out consistently? And then sometimes that's when you see pitchers start to nibble a little bit, try to be a little bit too fine, and that's when you see the increased walk rate happen. So there's a lot that's connected with having more of a focus on contact, and I would like the A's to have more of that purpose coming into 2026. Setting the tone with implementing some new philosophies, and to go a little bit further, it would be nice to have a prototypical leadoff hitter. And as currently constructed, I do know their best option is Lawrence Butler, which is great because he's their only stolen base threat consistently. Stole 20-plus bags last year. But the problem is his strikeout rate was, I believe, the worst on the team. So I think that's a mixed bag there. I think Butler cut down on that a little bit in the second half. But Butler, to me, would be more primed for being in that 2 spot. Definitely towards the top of the order because I like his wheels in the base path. But I think it takes a certain mentality to be that true leadoff hitter. I think it needs to be someone that has the willingness to work the count a little bit more. Someone that's going to fight a little bit better with 2 strikes. I'm not saying Butler doesn't, but the outcome shows that more times than not, it's going to end via the strikeouts compared to a typical leadoff hitter that even if you work a count 5, 6, 7, 8 pitches, you ended up grounding up to shortstop, that's still going to put pressure on that pitcher, and that still puts pressure on the opposing defense that they need to make the play. As compared to the strikeout, that's the end of the situation. Pitcher's feeling good about himself, and he gets to move on with a fresh count to the next batter to keep riding that momentum. Because to me, I think a strikeout's such a wasted at-bat. It really is. So, and I know it's a part of the game, and it happens quite frequently these days. But I think I would like to see the A's have a little bit more of that philosophy at the top of the order. I like thinking internally right now, I would say that would be Jacob Wilson. But then again, do you sacrifice having that stolen base stolen base threat at the top? Because that's not really Wilson's game. Doesn't have to be, though. That's food for thought. I think I like it. I would like to see Wilson increase the walk rate a little bit, but at least leading off the game, you know the ball is most likely going to be put in play. And a high average guy leading off with a base hit double and ever so often that home run, whatever the case may be. Jacob Wilson's a versatile hitter. I think I would like that. Now I'm talking myself into a little bit more as we're going here. I think that might be a good place to start and just see how it works. I know they've done it at times, especially against left-handed pitching. But why not do it against all hands? May create that spark, and it may even sliding down Butler to that 2 spot against righties might give him a little bit more comfortability to be able to settle in, get to see an at-bat of pitches before stepping in himself. Who knows? Might take a little bit of that pressure off his shoulders, and we might see a better version of Butler in terms of a consistent performance from pole to pole as compared to the roller coaster we were treated to last year. So I would like to see that, maybe a little bit of tweak of lineup construction, just to change the philosophy a little bit, give you the best opportunity to get that base hit to kick things off for your offense. Step 3, as we move along in our blueprint, pitching. It needs to improve all across the board. They pitched to a 4.37 ERA, which is 25th in baseball, and their 4.53 bullpen ERA was 26th. It's not good enough. When you couple that with a top 10 offense, it's not enough. There's definitely plenty of run support more times than not. So as a pitching staff, you got to get it done. To me, I've had this circled as the most important area to improve. And this is where the Blue Jays found themselves heading into 2025 too as well. They graded out towards the bottom half in ERA and with their 2024 performance, didn't get a lot of longevity out of their starters, didn't have consistent health. So I guess they waited a little bit later, but they did bolster their starting rotation, the Blue Jays, at the trade deadline, bringing in Shane Bieber from Cleveland, who was coming off injury himself, but was cleared to start. And it had an immediate impact. I mean, even if he wasn't the Cy Young version of himself, he was still putting up quality starts. He was revered in that clubhouse. Guys learned from him. And I think it set a tone to that team that they brought in reinforcements because management believes in this team. They believed in what they were putting forward. They were in prime playoff position at the time, but they felt they wanted to add a couple pieces to put them over the top, and it really paid off. Bieber pitched some important innings down the stretch and made some important postseason appearances. So adding a bona fide starter like that to go in with Kevin Gausman and the emergence of Travis Savage, and you have Chris Bassett, Max Scherzer. You had a whole conglomerate of starters there. Jose Barrios for the bulk of the year before he missed the back end due to injury. They were accumulating starters that had that longevity pedigree. It paid off. It got them to the World Series. It got them to Game 7. They didn't win the World Series, but they were the American League champions, and their starters really stepped up when they needed it, especially the rookie of Savage. That was impressive stuff. The parallels I draw there would be Luis Morales stepping up in that spot. Just looking at from an A's perspective, I could see him doing, I don't know necessarily if that dominant, but definitely up there. I could see a similar performance from Morales on that big stage. I think he has the calm demeanor to get it done. He's definitely got the electric stuff to keep hitters off balance all night. But I think that's what the A's need to do this offseason. I think they need to bring in a bona fide starter. And I know they tried doing that last offseason, handing out the largest free agent contract to Luis Severino in the John Fisher era. While Severino pitched a lot of innings, we didn't really get to see the ace that we were expecting when signing him last offseason. I mean, pitching to a 4.54 ERA, that's not an ace. That's a 5-starter. I know it was an adjustment, like I mentioned on previous episodes, no excuses, but I can bet you that's what Severino was dealing with because he pitched a lot better at home towards the back half of the season. He had a 6 ERA at home and a 3 ERA on the road. So I think once he got his bearings at Sutter Health Park, you saw a better version of him, and fingers crossed that he can be even better in 2026 and rebound towards more what we saw during his time with the Mets. But I don't think that's enough. I wouldn't mind seeing Severino slot down to that 2 slot and bring in an ace. This free agent class is filled with aces out there. You can bring in a Dylan Cease. You can bring in a Ranger Suarez. There's options out there, without a doubt. There's an opportunity for the A's to make a splash. They have room on the payroll. And I think you could go out there and get your Game 1 starter of any postseason series this offseason. What kind of message does that send again? A positive one. You're telling me the energy going down the mesa from this group wouldn't be off the charts if they bring in a bona fide ace to supplement this pitching rotation I think is going to be improved already. Like I said, I think going in with Severino, Springs, Luis Morales, Jacob Lopez, and then a battle for that 5th starter isn't the worst spot to be in. But imagine if you couple an ace with that, everyone slots down one, and then you go into the year knowing that you can rely on this pitching staff, and maybe some of those guys that would be vying for that 5th spot are going to make your bullpen that much deeper. Just think about it. Just bringing in a starter like that can speak volumes for this year's team and for years to come. Depending on the treatment of the player in terms of the contract they receive, they're welcome to the A's organization. It could really open the door and open the eyes to future free agents to say, hey, A's organization is serious now. They're doling out real money, and they're laying the foundation for a championship product. And it really goes into assembling the right group to have this team in a prime position to make a run at the American League East or West and be primed to land a spot in the postseason dance. This offense absolutely is good enough to be a postseason lineup, in my opinion. Can there be some tweaks there? Sure, just like with any lineup. But as long as there's not a steep decline across the board, this offense is good enough. The pitching needs improvement. That bullpen, they need an identity. And I think this offseason could be a good revamping to bring in a bona fide closer, another back-end guy, and add some bullpen depth pieces everywhere you can go. Treat spring training as an evaluation process. Bring in as many guys as you can to compete, because I think competition brings out the best in everyone. With where the bullpen ranked heading this past season, no one should be safe. There's guys you like, but everyone needs to come back and prove it and earn it. Because until that happens, it's going to be the same mishmash of trying to figure it out. Having that increased starter performance is also going to take pressure off of that bullpen. So I think those two go hand in hand, but that's why I have this area circled multiple times on my notes. Pitching. Go out and find your bona fide closer. Look at the Blue Jays. That was always an issue with them. They had it a little bit. Jordan Romano was pretty good, but then he kind of lost his way towards the end of his time in Toronto due to injury and some ineffectiveness. They go out, they make that a priority and bring in Jeff Hoffman to be their closer. And I know he primarily had a longer career as a setup guy, and it was a little bit roller coaster at times. But more times than not, I'm talking about the bulk of 162. So don't think of the lasting image of Jeff Hoffman giving up that game-tying home run in Game 7 to Miguel Rojas. I'm talking about the bulk of 162. ERA is a little bit inflated because he had a bad month. But take the months outside of that, kind of felt like there was a little bit more of that calmness at the end of games. Again, Blue Jays, with how good they were, if they had one area they could improve on, it's probably their bullpen consistency. But I think they worked on that. It was better than 2024. Still a work in improvement, a work in progress. But I think Hoffman at least gave them some stability, gave them some answers there. And again, in this free agent class, I think the A's can do better. There are a couple of candidates out there like a Helsley that is going to be on a one-year prove-it deal. You're telling me that a guy like that with a track record like that, with stuff that can blow you away in a new environment on a prove-it deal, wouldn't come in here foaming at the mouth with an opportunity to grab the ball and show the league that he could still be one of the game's most elite closers? There's guys like that out there. And quite cost-effective, too, as well, in terms of overall team payroll. There are a couple guys out there like a Diaz and a Suarez. I don't know if they're going to swing that big and spend those resources in that area. But that would turn a weakness into a strength, I'll tell you that. If you have a closer you can hand the ball to, coupled with a rotation that increases their depth, you're looking at one of the better teams in the American League. These moves need to be made, though. Now, I'm not saying that the A's can't have success without them, but making these moves in terms of revamping the bullpen culture, adding that starting pitching depth, that's going to make this offense look even better. Because if they have an opportunity to play more with the lead and not always have to come from behind, that's a lot more comfortable than that bat. That's when you can open things up and extend the lead. That's when you see those at-bats connect. See? It's all connected. Pitching and defense are your foundation, connects, webs out to your offense, which is your current best strength. It's all one unified machine when you have that championship product. And you can see it through our discussions. We've gone from increasing contact rate to take pressure off the pitching. And then we talked about having pitchers go deeper into games, starting pitchers, to take stress off of your bullpen to be able to preserve those leads. And then when you have the pitching preserving those leads, especially in those middle to late innings, then it circles back to your offense being able to extend upon those leads to be able to take the pressure off your pitching staff and get to the finish line victorious. See how it's all connected? That's what I love about our great game. And I think the blueprint is there. And I do think the A's have pieces to be able to get this done, but they've got a little bit of work to go, especially that contact rate and the pitching. Those are two big areas that I think need to see drastic, significant improvement before we can truly take this team seriously as a consistent postseason threat. Step 4, they got to set the defensive foundation. With a team that struggled protecting the baseball consistently to support the pitching staff, they're going to need to create a balance of offensive firepower with a defensive lineup that can also protect the lead. They made the ninth most errors in baseball. What that does, it extends innings and puts unnecessary stress on pitchers, whereas Toronto was a top 10 defense. See the difference of seasons right there? If you have a team that's toward the bottom half, defensively, more times than not, your pitching numbers are going to suffer. And then over the course of the marathon of the season, by year's end, that pitching staff is going to be drained, throwing extra pitches that they didn't think they were going to have to, most likely in stressful situations too as well. And you're going to reflect on that group and not have as many fond memories as you would like. So I do think the two foundations for most, if not all, successful ball clubs are having that pitching staff in place with depth and consistent outcomes, consistent performances and availability, as compared to, as well as having a defensive foundation. I'm not talking about needing to always make the highlight reel plays. I'm talking about making the plays that you are supposed to make. And again, there is always going to be that human element in this game. That's baseball. So there are going to be errors. It's always going to be there. It's never going to be zero. That is not what I'm asking for. But if you have a little bit more adherence to taking care of the baseball, focusing on the fundamentals, there's no reason why this team can't improve and be in the top half of this situation. That's why I think Darryl Hernandez needs to be a big part of this equation. Again, how this team is currently constructed. He can play second base, he can play short, he can play third. He played a lot of third base last year. That's an area, there's some question marks heading into 2026. I know a lot of teams like to have a power guy at that position, but I think the A's could have a unique situation where they've got enough power at other positions on this club that you can sacrifice a little bit of power. You're still going to get a pretty good contact rate, but definitely have one of your better defenders on this team in Darryl Hernandez. So that's why I think he needs to be a part, whether it's third base or second base. You need a little bit of that versatility in your lineup to be able to grow. Hernandez is one of those guys. He's going to make the plays, and he's going to make some highlight plays too as well. But he's also someone that can extend havoc on the base paths. He's a guy with ease can go first to third, take that extra base. He can steal a little bit. I would say that he's someone that if you want to be that well-balanced team, he's someone that breaks up the power and the contact and gives you a little, definitely more of the contact rate, but just gives you a different look as a player and gives you a different option. And he's going to shore up whatever positions he's at defensively. The pitcher's going to be very happy he's there on that day. I think another area to go here to improve and get along the lines of this blueprint is bringing in a guy like an Andres Jimenez that the Blue Jays brought in to be a utility guy, but ended up being their shortstop once Bo Bichette missed some time due to injury. And it paid off. He made all the plays. He had so many postseason moments, looking at the number of two-run home runs he hit to tie or give the Blue Jays a lead. Not typically a power guy, but definitely someone that showed up and came through in a big way in the moment. But he is a defensive wizard, and he provides the Blue Jays so many looks that if a lineup dictates a certain guy should be in the lineup and another guy shouldn't, you can move Jimenez around the infield. I think even the outfield too as well, if you're in a pinch, because he does provide that athleticism and defensive versatility all throughout the diamond. I think it would be very helpful if the A's improved in this area. I do know they have a guy in Max Schumann that can improve that, but I do believe there are options out there, free agency or via trade, where I think you'll get something very similarly in terms of talent with the glove, but I think there could be a little bit more of a consistent contact rate with the bat. I think Schumann provides his purpose for sure. He's a stolen base threat, definitely provides that athleticism, but would like to see a guy that contribute a little bit more consistently to the everyday lineup if called upon. I'm not saying Jimenez. Obviously, he's in Toronto, signed a long-term contract, but I'm saying someone of similar stature, similar ability would slide in very well here with the A's, like a Willie Castro. Not necessarily him either, but something like that. So the blueprint at the end of the day, play fundamental baseball. Fight with 2 strikes. Show that willingness to drive the ball to the opposite field. Make the plays you're supposed to make. Run smart but aggressive on the base paths. The A's, they can seek to get more athletic as compared to a team that lives by the 3 true outcomes of a walk, hit or home run, or strikeout. They don't have to go that way. This lineup can be a lot more diverse, but it needs some tweaking a little bit. Because like I mentioned, there's 1 stolen base threat, legitimately 2 at most. And it just depends who ends up in the starting lineup. But I think there's a little more versatility that needs to be had here and an improvement on the defensive side of things. There needs to be a change of philosophy, more of adherence of protecting the baseball and fighting with 2 strikes. If those 2 happen, I'd feel pretty confident that errors are going to be cut down and that strikeout rate is going to increase. I think if there's a little bit more adherence to plate discipline, you'll see that walk rate increase. And that's normal with a young ascending core. The more at-bats they get, the more experience, the movement they'll see, the pitch profiles, the better they'll get at that, at pitch recognition. So very intrigued to see what this group has in store for 2026. But I do think there needs to be an overall improvement in the OBP department. On the hill, like I mentioned, there's good options in that starting rotation, but I think really setting the tone for this group is bringing in a bona fide ace. There's guys out there on the free agent market. Go get one. You have room in the payroll, and that would speak volumes to the players in that clubhouse that there's a belief from the organization that this team can do winning things this year. They have the flexibility. They don't need to break the bank and get multiple starters, but they can go out and get one on a long-term deal, and they can flex it out a little bit to help with the short-term payroll, whatever they need to do to get creative. But they have the assets to get it done. Because if you add an ace to Sevy, Springs, Lopez, and Morales, like I mentioned, this group is going to be in postseason contention, coupled with the top 10 offense. To go along with that, need to continue with the revamp of this bullpen culture. It was not good enough last year. Changing in the guard when you had Mason Miller traded at the deadline to San Diego. You brought in some good prospects there, like a Henry Baez, who I think is going to be in competition for that closer role in 2026. But to me, I would go out there and go shopping. Go get 1 to 2 back-end relievers. They're out there. There's a guy out there on a very cost-effective deal looking to prove the league that he's still one of the best. Get it done. There's assets out there, and I know there's other teams vying for these guys' services, but put your best forward and make Sacramento a destination place to play because of where this team is headed, which is to greener pastures. This team is moving closer and closer to that postseason circle, being relevant in the American League West Division. But you need to add to this core to make it happen, or it's all going to be for naught. If you don't add, there's always going to be things that you like, but as a team whole, it's always going to feel like they're coming up a bit short. Blue Jays added 20 wins over the past season and made it all the way to Game 7, like I mentioned. Can that happen to the A's? Sure. Anything can happen in baseball. But the toughest part to forge a pathway to that is to get into the postseason dance. You got to win enough games to make that happen. They won 76 games last year. Not good enough. Don't know what the number is going to be this year. It varies from year to year, but I would say it would probably be somewhere in the 87 to 88 win range at the minimum. I think it was 87 this year. I think that's what the Tigers got in at. 88 wins. So 88 wins. That means they have to find at least 12 more wins from this past team and for this upcoming season. Can it happen? Absolutely. Blue Jays won 20 more games than the year before. But here's the thing. That's not a regular pattern. That doesn't always happen. So you can't bank on it. But there's got to be a lot of reason for optimism. This team added 7 wins last year. I do think this team has an opportunity to be an even better version of itself this year. 7 more wins gets you to 83 wins, so that's a winning season. Probably on the outside looking in for the postseason dance, although that would have gotten you in the National League wild card last year. So it does vary year to year. But as long as they continue on this trajectory, at the minimum, this team is going to be in the postseason hunt and play exciting, meaningful September games, which is a great place to start to ask for from this team. But to beat the big boys, you got to transition from playing AAA ball to playing big league ball. And I do think that is one area to challenge this team. To be in the big leagues, you got to act like a big leader. You got to have more play discipline. You got to fight with 2 strikes. You got to bear down the mound. You got to take that extra base. You got to field the play or field the ball with runners in scoring position and 2 outs. Get out of that inning. You got to have that drive, that focus, determination, and let it be contagious all throughout that clubhouse. I think this young core had a wonderful 2025 of experience with how to learn how to be a professional, more at-bats, more innings on the mound. With all that, I do believe the A's will be built for a much more consistent campaign, a group that plays hard, plays until that 27th out, thanks to the foundation set by this coaching staff led by Mark Kotze. I'm expecting another win increase in the win total, and if they reach a certain plateau and follow a blueprint, I'm not saying my blueprint, but something similar in terms of covering some of the most important philosophies that I think can be improved upon, well, in 2026, by year's end, we may just have some A's Day postseason pods to look forward to. All right, and that's the blueprint. Before we continue on with the back half of today's show, we're going to do a quick ad read and then get back to our topics of discussion. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this. Welcome to Mesa, Arizona, a destination for every season. Experience a destination where adventure, culture, and culinary experiences are limitless. As the gateway to the stunning Sonoran Desert and Tonto National Forest, Mesa invites you to explore its scenic waterways, kayak through winding canyons, or paddleboard along the Salt River. For a one-of-a-kind desert adventure, ride the waves at Revel Surf at Cannon Beach, the country's first surf park of its kind. Downtown Mesa is a vibrant hub, home to the Mesa Art Center, public art, award-winning breweries, and local shops. Food lovers can explore the fresh foodie trail and the diverse flavors of Mesa's Asian district. Sports fans can experience MLB spring training with the Chicago Cubs and Athletics, or visit one of North America's largest youth sports complexes. As the world's first autism-certified city, Mesa is dedicated to accessibility and inclusivity for all visitors. Thank you. Visit Mesa for all your support. All right, let's talk about lineup construction as the team is currently constructed. So we're going to start with our lineup of versus right-handed hitters and then versus left-handed hitters. So honestly, they're both going to be pretty similar at this point. I was tweaking around with this a little bit, and I think even as I was compiling, or if I was preparing for this episode, kind of had a change of heart. Because coming in, I was thinking that against right-handed pitchers that Lawrence Butler should be the leadoff hitter just based on the stolen base threat. And I just think in terms of the order, either the 1 or 2 spot might fit him best. And at first I was thinking, well, Jacob Wilson could be good, but I don't think he walks enough. And I think that not having as much of a stolen base threat at the top could be an element that would maybe not diversify the A's lineup as much. But then when I did a deeper dive into the numbers, I'm like, Jacob Wilson, though, he has a high contact rate, one of the highest contact rates in all of baseball, and one of the lowest strikeout rates. And you know what? That is going back to old school baseball, putting the ball in play consistently. And that's the kind of momentum you want to create off of that opposing pitcher. before the opposing pitcher gets into a groove, you want him to feel uncomfortable that even if he battles 6, 7, 8 pitches, ground out, hit a ball hard to short, maybe fly out, something like that. Just putting any inch of doubt of having contact made could go a long way later in that game. And it seemed like when Jacob Wilson, especially when he was leading off against lefties, it seemed like he'd be going 1 for 1 every day. And I know that's not the case, but it just kind of had that feel. So I think with how currently constructed, I think this is an area that the A's could go to as well if they wanted to go out there and find a legitimate, a trade partner for a leadoff hitter. If you wanted to go in the direction of a Stephen Kwan, or if you think of internal options. But I do think going into 2026 that Butler might be better suited for the 2 spot. That is a guy that, as baseball has modernized and has changed, you do see a lot of guys with power and speed in that 2 hole. And I think that would fit Butler's game a little bit better. So what I'm looking at, it's going to be pretty similar. So I would say I would have Jacob Wilson leading off and then Lawrence Butler in the 2 spot. I think that may take off a little bit of pressure of feeling like he needs to put on airs in a way to set a tone as that leadoff hitter for the offense. And maybe that's just not a role he's comfortable with. Maybe it got him thinking a little bit too much. Maybe taking some pitches he should have had a swing at, and then maybe swinging the pitches he should have taken. And I think that's why you saw an increase in that strikeout percentage. And you wonder, maybe sliding him down 1 spot, still making an impact at the top of the order with those wheels behind Wilson, I think could get a better version of Butler. So I would go Wilson, Butler, and I would go Nick Kurtz in the 3 hole, Brent Rooker in the 4, Tyler Soderstrom in the 5, Shea Langoliers in the 6, 30 home runs in the 6 spot, not bad. And I would do something like a Max Muncy hitting 7th at second, Hernandez batting 8th at third, and then Denzel Clark in center. And then on the bench, you would have Austin Wynns, your backup catcher. I'd like to see more of Carlos Cortez be that 4th outfielder. Zach Geloff is in this mix, and Brett Harris, or maybe a Max Schumann, something like that. But typically, they would most likely carry 13 position players. And then against left-handed hitters, pretty similar here, except had Butler move down the order a little bit just because he does seem to struggle against left-handed pitchers at a much more drastic clip as compared to right-handers, but still important to have Butler in that everyday lineup. He still offers the defense, the stolen base threat, so there's a lot of intangibles that even if the offense isn't there on a given day, there's a lot he can do to influence a victorious outcome for the team. So against lefties, I would have Jacob Wilson leading off at short, Nick Kurtz batting second, Brent Rooker hitting 3rd, Langoliers hitting 4th, Soderstrom hitting 5th, Muncy hitting 6th, Butler in the 7th spot, Hernandez, and then Clark. So pretty much the same conglomerate across the board, and that is one thing I like about this A's construction heading into 2026. I know there seems to be a shifting of having teams that have a lot of platoon guys on their roster, but I think that takes away a little bit of the continuity of a lineup. It's okay to have a couple guys mixed in here and there, like the Blue Jays has some significant outfield depth where they were able to platoon some of their outfield. But I think as a group and as a whole, that's not necessarily the formula that's going to get you consistent offensive output. I think being able to write out that same lineup pretty similarly with the same group of 9 to 10 guys is going to help the offense flourish as a whole by season's end. And now if you have ineffectiveness, if you have a lack of scoring runs, whatever the case may be, then yeah, sure, go ahead, shake it up. But I think if you're getting a group that's going out there as a unit and putting up a significant amount of runs, putting up quality at bats, and putting pressure on the opponents day in and day out, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So that's kind of where I'm at with these 2 lineups. Kind of wanted to touch on that basically because we're missing ball here. Can't wait to see the green and gold back in action. But would be curious to see if they were to upgrade at second base or third base, what that would look like and how that would change the dynamic over the overall lineup. So we'll have to keep tabs on the A's offseason activity for sure. And if there's a drastic position player brought in to bolster the offense, we'll be sure to revisit this topic without a doubt. All right, before we get on out of here, the A's signed 3 players to minor league contracts last week. Just to make sure we're all caught up, they signed first left-hand. These 2 happened on the 19th, so last Wednesday. And then this third guy was signed this past Saturday. So the A's signed left-handed pitcher Kyver de Horta to a minor league contract. The 18-year-old is a left-handed pitcher they signed as an international free agent from Colombia. Besides that, he doesn't have a track record. There are no registered professional stats, so I do believe this is his first taste of professional baseball. So looking forward to seeing what De Horta can provide the A's organization. Best of luck to him as he begins his professional career with the A's organization, most likely starting in one of the A levels. Will probably start at the Arizona complex down in Mesa. So we'll see if that pans out into someone that eventually becomes a difference maker, but that definitely will be in several years to come. The next move they made, also on the 19th, the A's signed free agent right-handed pitcher Jeff Hartlieb to a minor league contract. Hartlieb, he was originally selected by the Pittsburgh Pirates in the 29th round of the 2016 draft. He has been a part of 7 organizations during his MLB career, making stops starting with the Pirates and then the Mets, the Marlins, the Rockies, the Yankees, the Tigers, and Royals, now joining the A's as his 8th organization in his professional career. His most recent action had him being called up to Detroit on July 24th, later being designated for assignment after 2 appearances on the 26th, before officially being released from his Tigers minor league contract on August 19th. 8 days later from then, the Kansas City Royals signed Hartlieb to a minor league deal on August 27th before Hartlieb elected free agency on November 6th. He's made 68 appearances in his major league career, with 40 of them in his first 2 years in Pittsburgh in 2019 and 2020. He is someone that has basically, for the most part, been a career minor leaguer. He did pitch to a 4.39 ERA across 37 appearances at AAA ball last year. So we'll have to track to see if he adds himself into the mix for bullpen competition. More than likely, he will start the year at AAA Las Vegas. And then a familiar name, maybe he wasn't around for super long, but definitely a pitcher that was in a spring training camp this past year and made 5 appearances with the green and gold on the 2025 campaign. On Saturday, the A's signed left-handed pitcher Matt Crook to a minor league contract as well. He made 3 appearances. Originally, he broke a spring training camp with the AAA Aviators before getting called up. Eventually, he was DFA'd by the A's on May 27th before being picked up by the Cleveland Guardians and optioned to their AAA team. From there, he remained with the Guardians organization for the remainder of the season, and he eventually elected free agency on November 6th. He comes back in looking to win a job as one of the lefties in the bullpen, work for more consistency and command in the zone. If I am Crook, he definitely has the potential, the stuff to be a lefty specialist, needs to work on consistent repetition and consistent positive outcomes at the end of the day, equals the common equation for positive pitching in the big leagues. All right. And with that is a wrap on another edition of A's Day. We appreciate each and every one of you stopping by to kick off your week with us. We'll be back once again on Friday's show. We'll share with you any transactions that go down with the A's organization, as the MLB hot stove does seem to be hot in the street, which is not typical this time of year. Typically that heats up after the winter meetings happen in December. Seems like teams are getting a jump on getting their checklist done in terms of ways they can improve their clubs. So we'll be sure to keep you informed if the A's do anything different or add anything to the organization. And we'll be sure to be back on here Friday to talk all about it. And then we will continue on with our series of This Player in A's History. We are going to take it to the 90s, and we are going to talk about a player from that era of A's baseball. So tune in Friday. We'll be sure to all learn the story of another A's legend. That's all I have for you today. Looking forward to being back behind the mic again for Friday's show. Appreciate all of you continuing to tune in. Like, subscribe, download wherever you can to aid in our goal to continue to cover everything A's baseball, grow the game to new heights, and become a full-time organization. Once again, I'm your host, Joe Grado. I hope you all have a great holiday week. Happy Thanksgiving to all who celebrate, and we'll be back talking A's baseball on Friday. Holy Toledo, let's go A's.